Morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Tuesday, August 4th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We're going to talk about world building today, and where do you start with world building? Well, if you're like me, you start where it all began, baby. Back in the day, back in the old-timey, back where it all began. Well, right? That's where it started, huh? Back in original Dungeons and Dragons, rules for fantastic medieval wargame campaigns. Rules for fantastic medieval wargames. Campaigns playable with paper and pencil and miniature figures. It's so true. It is so true. I wonder if, yeah, there we go. Bring this up here. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. Why is... I don't see me up on the stream, but I do see... Maybe that's got to be refreshed. Okay, thought I was having some problems with the stream there. And now apparently I am not. Oh, there we go. We're going to move that around here. All right, that'll do it. There we go. Yeah, I think we're good now. Took a minute to bring it together. Should I start over? Nah. We're already on a roll. We're talking about that underworld and wilderness thing. Get me with my Lake Geneva game shirt on this morning. Don't I look like I know what I'm doing? Put me behind the desk? Nah. Playing around with the camera stuff today. Been toying with it a little bit between shows too, but Death Angel Shadow, good morning. Thanks for that tip. You got my PMs back on that. I think they're definitely looking for some groggy guys, but I think they're looking for multiple groggy guys. There's a show, there's a podcast where these two guys, I don't think they started playing until the 80s, but they consider themselves grognards, and that's fine. They interview a lot of people. Carlos, Castle Entertainment, did a couple of interviews with them last fall. I don't know if it's called the Grognard Show or if it's called Two Grognards, or I don't know. Glenn does a anchor thing every day. His thing's the Grognard thing, but he's on his own, and so I don't think they were talking about him either. And then there's those two guys that do the video stuff. At least they were for a while. Morning, Lexfire. How you doing? I don't know what happened to them either. They seem to have slowed down a bit. Maybe they're having trouble getting more. Once you hit the you do the interview format, right? You've got to have guests. And if you do a fairly frequent show, you're gonna quickly run out of top tier guests for sure, especially in this area, right? Because if you're doing grognard stuff, not old school, not like old school Renaissance necessarily, right? But flat out old stuff, then what do you got? You got a handful of guys that were around back then that are available for interviews, right? You got Dave McGarry and Wesley, Major Wesley, and you've got Luke and Ernie, of course, and Jim Ward, Tim Cass, Frank Mentzer's still around. You've got you go a little further afield and catch like a couple years past that, right? Like you could ask Steve Jackson. He's been around hell of a long time. Even if you were to look at like Jeff Leeson or Steve Sullivan or any of the later TSR people, Steve Jackson's still around longer than those guys. There's a few people that are in wargaming that are still around. But the point is, once you get past 10 or 15 people, if you can get all of them, great. But once you get past 10 or 15 people, now you're looking at people that didn't start on the scene until maybe they gamed in the 70s, but, started playing with the D&D basics, box sets and stuff, and then played in the 80s and stuff. And if you're lucky, worked in the industry in the 80s. I mean, if you're interviewing people, you want people that worked in the industry, I would think, just to get some inside scoop stuff. There's still plenty of people that played, right? I mean, I played since the early 70s, but I didn't work in the industry back then. So my stories, whatever stories I have, are kitchen table and a few con stories that are hazy as anything, right? But there you go. Let's sit up straight. Let's look like a real Picard. We'll pull the shirt down and all that. Grail Knight, how you doing? Hobbsy, Ink Dweller 8. Maltworm, what's up, buddy? Look at all you guys. Man, you're just piling in this morning. Great crowd. So, anyway, part of this world building, right? Cartography and World Building Tuesday is the world building side of it. And I thought I'd take a look at some of the good old day stuff. I wonder if that's... All right, well, let's see if we can... Yeah, there we go. All right, what I want to do is I want to pull this baby. I'm going to pull this baby in. It's going to be single page anyway. We've got to put it somewhere useful, like behind that. We get rid of that. Does it cover everything up? No, that's okay. That's all right. Oh, we got to move it, though. Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. It's pretty good as is, right? There we go. Slide it over. We'll smallify it a little bit. Yeah. So that was it, huh? This is what taught us back in the day, was looking at this Underworld and Wilderness Adventures rule book from original D&D, because it's all we had. But that was all right, because it's all anybody used, and even though it gave us some pretty cool tips here, let's flip through. Let's move on into, right? This was kind of early. So think about this. When you're originally building a world, is the first thing you think of a dungeon? Because that was definitely the mindset of Dungeons and Dragons. The whole idea of you created a dungeon, and then almost as an afterthought, there was the idea that you'd throw a little village nearby, so you could explain where people were buying their iron spikes. It was a safe zone, right? A place for people to run back to rest up, to heal their broken bones, to get their 1 hit point a day back. Is that even a rule then? I don't think until first edition. But yeah, it was all about create that dungeon and make it all crazy and such. So you're going downstairs and you're going up a chute. Well, how do you get from one to the other? We got to go this way, right? Or you go down from second to third. Oh yeah, you know what? We were going to do this thing with We want to do this thing where we click the old ease of access, get on the cursor, pop that over, get that going. There we go. We could make it a little bit smaller. And then bring that back down. There it is. The big hand, baby. See, the problem is it doesn't stay as a cursor on a thing. Over here, I can make it similar to grognard colors. Anyway, all very cool. Talk about layout, sample map. It's got a nice little detailed thing. You ever get a chance to pick this up, you can get the PDF on drive-through. I'm not even sure if this was the one you'd get. This one's pretty clean, but this would have been when Wizards of the Coast first went to James Matthey, when it was still only RPG Now and OBS didn't even exist yet. And the first time that Wizards was going to put stuff up on RPG Now, James came around to a handful of us that were trusted people that had been on the site for a while and knew how the interface worked, because we'd already been uploading stuff as publishers and whatever, and cut a deal with us. We would get store credit to help him just plow through all this old stuff. And Jim Butler was Jeff Butler, the artist. Jim Butler, the TSR then turned Wizards guy, was tasked with the unenviable task of just, I don't know how many people had working for him, but they were just photocopying everything they had in the archives. And some of them were, more care was taken early on, and I'm sure they got pressure from above. You know, how many have you done this week? We've got so many, and we need them all up, and we need it done because we need you back on this other. So I'm sure there was a lot of pressure as time went on just to get more and more of it done. And there were a lot of complaints with some of the later stuff because he had a lot of people working for him, and it's only so much time you can devote to looking over someone else's shoulder before you might as well just be doing it yourself. You got to trust people. And if they were just churning it out and not doing a good job, I don't think that's on him. But there were some bad ones. Anyway, the earlier stuff was pretty clean and pretty nice. So if you can get stuff now, it may be that same original. But when they took everything off of drive-through OBS and then eventually built up DM's Guild and put stuff back up, I think because it's more, even though it's still OBS, I think they're taking ownership of it more. So they went back and redid a lot of the scans and PDFs. So stuff's a lot cleaner than it used to be. I got a ton of stuff when I did that because it was the first time it was available and I wanted it. And over the years, I have gotten a ton of notices that they've put up a new file, which can only mean they rescanned it or scanned a cleaner copy or scanned a new copy. or whatever, and then built a fresh PDF from newer scans, cleaned them all up. And that's exactly what you did. When I re-download them, I download them with a different name. That way I change the name of the old one so I can keep both files, and I check out what was the original one that I'd gotten from them compared to the new one. And when I have checked it out, it's often so much better. Anyway, that is to say, if you have any interest in this old stuff from Wizards, and it's available, because some of it comes and goes. Sometimes they take it down, they put it back up. I don't get it. I don't understand half of that, but it's all pretty good. It's worth grabbing. And if you want to read about how they did all the suggestions they made for how you would build Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, then for sure you want to get yourself a copy of the third booklet. So here you go. Now, we've seen things like, anybody who's old school has seen things like wandering monster tables, but this matrix really is set up to flesh out during prep, right? So you look at that dungeon map you created, all those maps you created, decide what level, and then get your monster. There is a cool thing. I wonder if I can find it real quick. Let me have a look. Over on Paul Yu's blog of holding. That's what it's called. And let me see if I can find it, because it's very cool. Oops, gonna take that off there. Move this over. Let me switch back over to this. Here we go. So over on the blog of holding, he's got posters. D&D posters and books. Yep. And one of the ones I love, and we put this up at the store and got a copy of it. It's only $8, probably plus shipping. Okay, not showing up there. You may have to actually contact him to get a hold of it. It is, okay, email him for this. This is a flowchart based off the original D&D Wandering Monster tables. I wonder if we can do this and do this and get a look at it in a larger form. There we go. This will help. So these tables here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That, as you can tell, was what we were just looking at in the charts. He calls them Wandering Monster tables, but these are prep tables. This is the outdoor stuff. If you're in the clear, it could be these types of these types of creatures. It can't be red. If it's men, you go up here, you know, the different types of men, brigands, bandits, all of that. You could get this poster. It's a world building tip for sure. You could get this original poster and build your entire campaign, or run a complete game off the cuff off of this. You go down, we're on the first level of a dungeon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What level of monster? We go to the first level of monster. If we roll that, 1 through 12. We got, skeletons, kobolds, blah, blah, blah. All the different types. Second level, third level monster, fourth level monster. And remember, level means 12 different things in D&D, right? This is the level of monster, not the level of the dungeon. Not to be confused with the level of a character. So on and so forth, right? All right. That kills that. So, blog of holding. The guy who made these is Paul Hughes. It appears that you can email Paul at blog of holding. It's probably blogofholding.com. Paul Hughes, Paul's Dungeon Master Notebook. Yeah, he's got some neat little stuff in here. And all of them are cool. But in particular, that one. Boom, let's get rid of that. There we go. In particular, that one poster is a great world building tool if you're running old school games, and I don't care if you're running OD&D First Edition or any of the basics, any of the BX, BCMI. I never get those right. Even Second Edition. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff than what's on that poster or in those charts. Obviously, if we look at this here, ooh, where are we at? There we go. If we look at this here, we see that there's only 8 different things as first level monsters, and there's a ton more than that, right? Only 10 different things for a second, 10, up to 4 level monsters, and let's go down one. 12 and 12 for 5th and 6th. Hey, it never really occurred to me before, but they kind of skew it heavy toward higher level monsters, tougher monsters, huh? That's a surprise to me. But what do you do? They also include, of course, wizards, evil high priests, so those are really character class monsters, right? Superheroes are really high level fighters, sorcerers, high level magic users. So a couple of these on those charts are, what do we got down here? Enchanters are magic users, Myrmidons and evil priests are fighters and clerics respectively. So really you only have 7 monsters. That's cheap. Why? I feel ripped off. They've ruined my childhood. Not really. Nobody ruins anybody's childhood on accident. Okay, so we've got all these things here for filling up your thing. They do an example of play, which is good. Let's go on to these wilderness wandering monster charts. This is what you saw on the top half of that poster, which is to say, if you're in the clear, you're either lost or you have an encounter. If you're having an encounter and in the clear, you roll on this 8-sider table. If you roll, let's say, men, you go down to the men types. Typical. Now, mountain would have its own table. Desert has a specific table, and waterborne has its specific table. So if you're at sea or whatever. But if you're in the clear or woods, or even swamp, I guess, well, yeah, that's not swamp. Then you've got these 12 different types. Patriarch is and evil high priests are actually high-level clerics. Superhero and lord. Wizard, necromancer. So really you've got bandits, brigands, more bandits, berserkers, brigands, and bandits. We've got 3 different types of creatures, men creatures that you can run into that aren't actually player character types. Mountains has its own thing. Again, bandits, berserkers, and brigands. Lord, wizard, superhero. But you've got cavemen. And there's an interesting thing for world building. Couple of options to fit cavemen into a world, right? You want to do something like that, you either have to have some kind of a lost world plateau where, and you have to decide, if I do a sort of a lost world thing, do I go back to the 50s and early 20th century fantasy sci-fi where certain types of humanoids, proto-men, cavemen, could live alongside dinosaurs? You have to make that, am I going to be pulpy and kitschy, or am I going to try to make it a real time travel type thing, a real throwback to a specific time period? If you do that, you better do a little research on, which, because there are multiple different periods where different types of dinosaurs coexisted, and sometimes, if we do the catch-all sort of thing, then I can take a dinosaur from this period and a dinosaur from that period, and they can be on the same. But can't always do that if we're trying to be, especially not if you've got that one player who's read that one book and is going to call you out on everything. Oh, these two never existed in the same period, so I don't think that you should have. Well, really? Okay, well, roll for initiative, because that's how we do it, right? You talk too much, we roll for initiative. I know that's what Hobbsy does. Let me take a moment. Let me take a moment right now to say that all of those people that think that Jason Hobbs is a kind and generous DM, my poor Shardsworth, my human thief, which survived a session last time we played, last night was brutally destroyed by the DM for doing nothing more than jumping off a 20-foot high obelisk to try to get a sneak attack in on a 8-hit die flesh golem. I don't think it's unfair to assume that a first level thief with a very high 4 hit points should be in fear in that situation of dying. And yet, well, in fairness, I did 8 points of damage, and then I rolled off to the side I was still in, and then it attacked me the next round with one of its 2 big bludgeoning fists and clocked me into the ground with 6 hit points. Hobbs the Cruel, indeed. It was horrible. Classic death from above scenario. It's so true. Gravity not forgiving, but I did survive because I rolled off of after the hit. But so gravity was not the killer. It was the fist of a flesh golem. And this was no ordinary flesh golem. He kind of stacked the deck against it. Still only 8 hit dice, right? But it wasn't stitched together. This evil demon horned king guy actually burned the pieces together. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if that was the Horned King's doing. This thing came up out of the underworld. We found an entrance to a dungeon. Now, here's another thing. You've got this big old campaign world, and the entrance is guarded by an 8th level demon and 5 wraiths and a flesh golem. They're pretty much saying you're not going down into that dungeon. But I'll tell you what, my next first level thief will be going straight back there if I can have anything to say about it. So yeah, bravely leapt into the golem's fist. It was all I could do. I was doing my best to make sure that the rest of the party was going to live. And as it should be. As it should be. You're right. Maltworm was there. Maltworm knows the story. Maltworm will forever miss Shardsworth. And I have to see now, I pretty much have to come up, the stats I rolled at the end of last night, world building tip from a player perspective, is actually worse than the stats, and I had rolled up horrible stats for Shardsworth. I think I had an 11 and a couple 11s and a 12, and then a 9 and an 8. And I have 15, but we're rolling in order, and the 15 was in charisma, so I played him up as a talker. He was always talking, trying to put his 2 cents in to keep himself alive. But now I've got this guy with a 5 intelligence and average charisma, and his best stat, I think, was a 13 in dexterity. So he's no better a thief, but he's nowhere near a talker, and he has no brains whatsoever. So this guy, I got to play him. I mean, I'll play him up for the stats that he has. I can't be, suggesting intelligent courses of action anymore. Which I think I was trying to do last time around, was just to throw my 2 cents in to help us survive. And we did. I mean, the main party of the group survived and did great. So everything worked out on that score. One guy, one long-term PC died, and then my guy, who was just around for a little bit, only one session previously. And then a whole bunch of hirelings bought it. So what are you going to do? Lightning bolt into our one of our two clerics, and that cleric had a whole bunch of hirelings huddled around because that kept them inside the anti-undead ward, which was protecting them all, essentially. And the Horn King dropped I want to say 8-die lightning bolt into the area, and it zapped everybody within the 5 foot. And sad, of course, even though I think 4 1s and a 2 and a 6 and a 4 were rolled, even a saving throw is not going to save a 0 level. So they were all dead. And the points were enough to kill the cleric. So, missed death save later on. This is something they do in OSE. I got a death save later on because I was, 6 hit points out of 4. And they don't do the 10 under thingy like first edition does. It's just straight up, you're at 0 or below. And if you make a death save, you can be revived. Which is kind of cool, because if you took 11 below, dead is dead, right? Anywho, these are the wilderness encounters. As you can see, they are red Martians, black Martians, yellow Martians, white Martians, Tharks. This is a little something with the Mars flavor on it. So you've got that extended. Otherwise, you got 6 to work with. And again, higher levels. A lot of these are higher level things. Balrogs, we know they had to sponge that from a later one. So that's interesting. This has to be the original one that I got back then, because otherwise that would have been out of it because of the lawsuit. It wouldn't have been the one that got scanned. All right, there we go. World building. They give you some castle building instructions and talk about who you need to have in support of the castle and all of that stuff. And then we get into flying rules and stuff like that. And none of that makes all that much difference, because that's not really world building stuff. Anyway, this has been an original plus advanced world building session. I think we're past the 30-minute mark, so we'll wind her down then. We'll close her out. I want to thank everybody for joining me for Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, a look at world building with the original D&D stuff. We're going to be spending some time in future world building Tuesday vlogs, whatever we call these, Grognard shows, with the DMG world building stuff. So we'll look at some of that. But we also want to look at outside sources, non-gaming sources. Something I re-upped recently was my Great Courses Plus video lecture series. They basically get college professors, university professors from all over the countries that are well-known, well-respected in their fields, and have them record 24-part, 36-part lecture series. They have access. They're an offshoot from the original Learning Channel. So they have access to all sorts of art and graphics and whatever that maybe even the professor wouldn't have had access to, that you can use to enhance their various lecture series. The Middle Ages ones, the early Middle Ages and high Middle Ages ones are on Great Courses Plus. They don't have the late Middle Ages one on there, but it does. There's one that exists. It's not on Great Courses Plus streaming, but you can get it from if you want to actually shell out the money. They're pretty expensive, but for $45, $15 a month to commit to 3 months, well, it does look like we're going to be continuing with some of this lockdown stuff. So I'll have plenty of time to watch more than a few of these things, and it beats the heck out of watching, Dancing with the Stars or some other ridiculous, ridiculous programming that they're trying to push together now that no productions are running. Anywho, what do we got going here for tomorrow? Campaign discussion, focusing on Grimbald. Not really sure what I'm going to be talking about. Game running tips Thursday. It's all going to be a surprise this week. Building adventures on Friday. Got DMing reviews on Saturday. Sunday, rules retrospective. We'll move on from the fighters to probably the cleric, I think, when we're looking at the first edition character classes. Then back around to Monday to weekly news and announcements. I do want to thank you. If you're on Twitch, please do follow the channel. Make sure you chime in on the stream chat, because that's how we know you're not a bot, and then we add you to just a free drawing we do. Doesn't cost you anything, and it's good for there to be a no purchase necessary sort of a thing. Who else is here that I didn't get from Grail Knight? Oh, okay. I don't have you on the list yet for this week, but now you are. And Maltworm got you in there. Hobbs, I didn't have you in for this week. This must be the first time you've been here this week. That's good. Good little crowd today. Got the rest of you. Article Justicar, Electfire 22, Ink Dweller 8, Prometheus Bound. One more quick look, scrolling up to make sure I didn't miss anybody on here. Death Angel Shadow, who, by the way, I can finally reveal, since he accepted, was the winner of last week's free drawing. Virtual Gamehole Con badge. Death Angel Shadow will be joining us. Joining Artanis, 8242, Red Barn Games, Grail Knight, Lost Nomad, Lexfire 22, Ink Dweller 8, Hobbs, Heath. All of you guys have won badges, so all of you will be doing the thing. See ya. Thank you very much, everybody. So make sure you chime in if you are here, and also if you're on catching this on YouTube, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. Maybe make a comment. Some constructive criticism is always good. I want to thank everybody once again and just say to you, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.